Welcome back to Celtic State of Mind. It's Monday afternoon, 12:30. I'm Paul John Dykes, and as always on a Monday, I'm joined by Colin Watt, who is sporting yet another new item of Celtic stroke Adidas attire. Colin, where do you get all the dough?
It's not a new one. I've had it a while, but yeah, I have someone who's very generous to me.
Have you? Okay. Yeah. Lucky you. Plenty to discuss. Loads of talking points over the 2-0 victory against Ross County. There is the little matter of a derby game coming up at the end of this week. The tagline reads, how Ange will block out the noise as he prepares for Glasgow Derby. This isn't a new fixture to Ange Postecoglou. And another thing that isn't new, Colin, is all the racket that you have to put up with as a Celtic manager. And no doubt, with the departures of yet another 2 English Premiership managers, we'll be getting all that nonsense chucked at us all week, Colin.
Yeah, I was looking at it and I seen someone on social media talking about how you could potentially put together a sort of bingo card for what you're going to see in the papers this week. And I've actually put my own together. So the bingo cards for this week, and we can tick them off as the week goes on. So my prediction is you'll get all these headlines. Mm-hmm. So we'll have an average Rangers player saying it's their time to shine. That's happened today. John Lundstrom's came out. An average Rangers player compared to one of their greatest evers. That's bound to happen. Rangers to receive an injury boost. Always happens. Somebody will come back fit. Rangers manager to be the best they've ever had. That's always something that comes out round about then.
Future England manager, perhaps.
Exactly. Pundits predict the gap is closer than ever.
All right.
That'll probably be on tonight's Super Scoreboard. And then we get on to the Celtic side of it. Ange linked with dream job away from Celtic. The Chelsea and Leicester jobs are now up. Guarantee gets linked with one of them by the end of the week. An agent comes out to say that a top Celtic player is unsettled. Always happens just before a derby. Mm-hmm. A Celtic player linked with a move abroad. That's definitely in there as well. And probably an injury crisis at Lennoxtown. And we'll wrap it off with the big star prize in the middle of it as well, is Rangers player to say that it doesn't matter what the result is, they're definitely the best team in Glasgow, and we know that's a load of
old tosh. Yes, Colin, I think you've kind of covered it there. Any other headlines you're expecting to see this week, let us know in the comments section. We've got a couple of special guests, very special guests coming in at 1 o'clock as well, because, there's one thing about Celtic fans and Celtic as a football club, and that is the charitable origins of the club and the fact that it's interwoven within the whole tapestry of Celtic's culture now, insofar as a good pal of ours is involved in the Celtic FC Foundation Supporters Committee, and 2 members of that committee will be coming on to the show to tell us all about Seville, the Celtic way. A fundraiser that will be happening in May, but as I say, we will be talking a wee bit more to Lisa and Julie at 1 o'clock. In relation to that, Colin, because it has been 20 years since Seville, and, I was asked earlier on, and I threw this out to you guys and girls in the Acsom group, if you could ask Neil Lennon a question leading up to the big game this weekend, what would it be? And things would be around European aspirations. He played it, for a side who got to a European final, Colin. What does Ange need to do to elevate Celtic to a bigger and better European standing? What would you ask?
Just on Saturday's game, I take it, yeah. There's a lot I'd like to ask about that behind closed doors season. I think you've got to kind of take on board the fact that he's played under some hostile environments. And when you look at it, it's like, what was more daunting for him, going and playing at Ibrox where a crowd hates you, or going and playing for your country and captaining your country where half the crowd hates you? What was the more hostile environment?
That's an interesting question. I mean, real hostile environments. We spoke to Martin O'Neill recently. He was the first ever Catholic to captain the North of Ireland, and he spoke about the furore around that when Billy Bingham selected him as a captain for that side. And of course, he led them to the 1982 World Cup finals in Spain, where they performed really, really well. Yeah, hostile atmospheres. Neil Lennon has dealt with a few of them. There isn't going to be a hostile atmosphere in terms of Celtic this weekend, Colin. You're looking forward to, once again, a full Celtic Park, whereby it's memories of the February game last year where we beat them 3-0.
Yes and no. I've got to say that night was fantastic. It was an incredible night. The atmosphere was unbelievable. Obviously, the performance lived up to that as well. It was a great performance for the team. But I was brought up on the allocations, and I think we are sort of ruining the fixture to an extent by having these squabbles. And you can see Celtic are obviously agreeing more with what I'm trying to say as well, because they were one of the ones. Apologies, this is Greenock and there is sirens.
There's always sirens at 12:30 on a Monday in Greenock, Colin. I don't know what it says about your community.
But I think when you look at it, like, one of my earliest memories of the game was walking up and getting up to the stairs onto it, and you look out and you see the people across from where I sit, and you hear the noise that's generated, and then shutting them up when you score that goal. For me, it's one of those kind of great moments when you do that, and the more of them that see us smashing them, the better, probably.
See, the thing for me on that note, obviously we've spoken long and hard about why we are where we are in relation to, whose decisions have snowballed a scenario where Celtic were left in, an impossible position, Colin, whereby they have to look at the safety of the fans. At Ibrox, they approached Rangers and requested that the allocation goes back to what was normal. We're not talking 750, we're talking 7,500, the Broom loan, right? And that was knocked back for whatever reasons Rangers have. That was knocked back, and Celtic said, well, you can't guarantee the safety of our fans in that corner, therefore we're not taking your tickets and you're not getting any for Celtic Park either. So we're in a situation now where we've actually got a scenario where managers and players who have come and gone into this fixture have never experienced it for what it used to be. You look at Juranovic, Giakoumakis, players that came in under Ange Postecoglou and have left under Ange Postecoglou. They've never been and played in that environment at Ibrox or in that environment at Celtic Park, Colin. And eventually, because I can't see this changing, because we don't have an authority within Scottish football with a backbone to take control of the situation, we're going to have a generation of fans who don't know what it's like. You're talking about memories going to the game at home. I've got many memories of going to that away fixture as well.
Yes,
and the thing is, Colin, there's going to be a generation of fans who haven't seen it eventually. We talk about players, the 3-year cycle of a player coming and going to the club. They're not going to leave and then appear in some Gazzetta sport newspaper saying, it's the best derby in the world. They won't.
Yeah, I
because they've not experienced it.
And you think on it, it's like when you went to those games, whether it be at Ibrox or at Celtic Park, and they start singing whatever usually vile song that they start singing, it encourages the fans to get louder to drown them out. And sometimes when there's a game that's sort of on a knife edge and you're looking for that support from the crowd, that encouragement to get even louder can drive the team on you. I feel like I'm name dropping, I'm not, but we'd Chris Sutton in our local CSC not that long ago.
Oh, I just dropped into the local. Chris Sutton,
well, obviously. And he was saying about how it's all about the supporters and how much the supporters bring to that game and how much they drive them on. And it's not even a cliche, it is something you hear from a lot of different players about how supporters can be the 12th man. Now, see if you go back to the likes of the Hibs game the other week, obviously 1-0 down, Hibs are down to 10 men, the fans start to go on the players' backs a bit, and it takes until Jota gets that penalty and slots it away. And the first thing he does is he turns to the crowd and he tries to G them up, because they know that when the fans are on their side, they can do it. So Saturday coming up, there's going to be 60,000 Celtic fans there. That should be enough to G them on. But seeing a knife-edge game, if the fans start turning on the players' backs, it makes it even harder for them as well. So what you want is that balance where if there is, say for example, they start singing whatever they're singing, the Celtic fans react and retaliate to it, and they raise their game. I mean, you think back to like the 3-0 game where Gary Hooper and Chris Cobbins scored and the stadium's bouncing and it's a fantastic atmosphere. Or the fun elements that have been brought out of it, like the old Scotland shame banner and the arrow pointing to them. Those are memorable moments.
was Kevin Graham that was holding that up, by the way, one side
Was
of it. It was. Yes, with a big hood on and all that, goggles, trying to pretend he was an ultra. But yeah, you're right. And I remember that particular game you were talking about, the 3-0 game. There was a real coming together that day. You know, I'm pretty sure, did we do the huddle or the Bruni? One or the other. I remember doing that on that particular day, sunny day, and just absolutely, you feel galvanised, I think, and particularly in the away fixture, Colin, if the fans are behind you, the players. I mean, if you were to ask Ange Postecoglou this week, you know, if we're playing, in the week leading up to the tie or the fixture at Ibrox, would you rather even 750 Celtic fans were in the stadium? And, you know, in terms of getting behind the team, I'm pretty sure his answer would be, yeah. I can understand why the club are refusing to take the tickets, because safety is paramount and it's a priority. But you need that backing from the Celtic support. And you going about the behind closed doors season. Listen, at the time, we were all completely immersed in it and the emotions of it, Colin. You're looking for who's responsible for this. Right, change that so we can still win the league. Looking back, a massive part of it was the environment in which we were playing in. And so many players have spoken about that. Ex-players, current players, about the impact of having the Celtic fans behind you. I think it's going to work in our favour on Saturday at 12:30 for sure. The sound when Celtic run onto that park, Colin, is going to be mind-blowing.
Absolutely. And, you know, I understand the argument from the other side as well. I've seen it in the comments already. People saying, well, their behaviour's shocking. They've done this, they've done that, they've done the next thing. But it's almost like a sort of necessary evil if it means that you get that support that can go to Ibrox, like the 8,000 in the Broom one. You think of the memories that's been created there, the celebrations that we've had there, and it's almost like a necessary evil that you've got to give them tickets so that we can get in. And that's why Celtic have took this decision to not give tickets to Rangers ahead of this game, and Rangers have just retaliated and done the exact same to us.
Have they not overcommitted with the season tickets now, so that they actually couldn't go back to the 7,500, 8,000, could they? I think that's maybe one of the issues.
Celtic are probably in that same boat as well when you look at the fans. I mean, the sort of section of that 7,500, it was like halfway behind that goal. So listen, I don't know if Celtic are probably the same.
There was a time in the 1980s where Ibrox had a lot more Celtic fans in it than 7,500 because they couldn't sell their home allocation. I'm going to bring up quite a few comments. 550 strong on a Monday afternoon is astonishing. So thanks everybody for your support. We do have an appeal to put out there, very emotional and sad appeal prior to getting the ladies in to talk about the foundation endeavours in relation to a missing person. And, you know, this does show, and it shines a light on how helpful social media can be at times, Colin, when something like this does happen. And it's very close to the villages from which I originate. And the young man in question is Reese Roger. And I'm going to bring up an image of Reese as well, because we spoke last week, Colin. It was this time last week we spoke about Evan Reid. This is a different situation, and just as sad, just as emotional. Everybody around about the villages and the family are very keen for anybody, if possible, to get a hold of Reese Roger. He's only 28 years of age, and he's gone on a camping / fishing trip with his mates. He was last seen at 11:30 on Saturday night. That was over 2 weeks ago now. So when you see the terrain and you see the environment in which they were positioned and where they were fishing, it is very, very worrying. And I'm going to remove the headline so you can get the reference number that if you've got any information, you can call 101. The reference this time is 1348 of the 19th of March. Obviously, that call went in the following day. He's not been seen since. There's been a potential sighting the following morning. He's wearing a very distinctive MA Stroom jersey, black with white writing down the sleeve. Check out the socials. We'll put a few more pictures up on the socials, Colin. And just get in touch, anything at all that you think you might know. He was up at near to Kinloch Rannoch area on Saturday, 18th of March. And understandably, his family are extremely worried, Colin.
Yeah, that one's... that's another horrible situation. That's someone that's roughly my age as well, and I think he said he's got a couple of kids as well.
Yeah.
I know. You know, I don't want to sort of preempt anything, but you don't know what's happening these days, and men's sort of mental health struggles and stuff over the last couple of years, it's horrible. I think this country's got a lot it needs to do to help this generation.
It is, and often when there's a missing person, it's like 24-hour updates on the news and stuff. And unfortunately, we haven't heard much about Reece other than on social media. A couple of updates on the Tayside Police website, etc. So please, if you do listen to A Celtic State of Mind, and if you follow us, Colin, myself, Acsom on social media, we've already posted about it this morning. Retweet it, share it. You just never know who's going to see that, Colin, and something might come to mind about that weekend when they've been in the area, and they might be able to assist the police. And of course, we'll talk about football matters that we've just been witnessing over the weekend. I'm going to start off, Colin, the first start by Tomoki Iwata. We were at the press conference when he signed. Was it yourself that spoke to him, actually?
No.
Did we send the Japanese-speaking Acsom contributor?
I think we did,
that one?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at his performance at the weekend. I said after the game with Lawrence, I was very impressed. I think that there's a composure about him, Colin. He's always looking. He's always getting into a space, looking for the ball, never hides. And then he uses the ball really well. I think maybe in the last 20, maybe once or twice he lost possession, but that was maybe due to tiredness because, let's be honest, he hasn't played that many games. 8 appearances. This is his first start. He's 26 on Friday, and he was the MVP in Japanese football prior to coming to Celtic. I think we've got a lot more to see from him. However, as well as how impressed were you with his first start, what happens going into the weekend's game? We've heard from Ange that Taylor and Moy and Atati should be back. Obviously, if they are, you would expect Iwata to drop out. You'd be confident if there was a position in the midfield for him, though, based on that performance. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Again, you're mentioning how it was his first start. He's not played a lot of football since he came to Celtic, so that sort of tail off towards the end is completely understandable. But you did see glimpses of the reason why he was the J-League Player of the Year, or the MVP, as you called him. You can
I just threw that in because I've been watching Space Jam with the Bear, and I'm not actually sure if that was the title.
The new one or the old one?
Both. We had to go back to the original.
I've not seen that.
It's not aged that well. The new one's good though. Anyway, that's a Thursday tangent with JP. That's up there. Space Jam.
But yeah, definitely. He did show glimpses. The sort of touch and control, and as you say, the passing movement, always wanting the ball. You can see exactly where he fits into Ange Postecoglou's system. The first half when he plays the ball through to Kyogo, it should have done a lot better. You're just seeing the glimpses of what he can do, and I think he's very similar to O, and what O has shown so far in the fact that you can see there's a player there. They're going to take a bit of time to settle, and they're going to show probably more of what they can do later this season, if not probably the start of next season, once he's got a full pre-season with Celtic under their belts.
I find it interesting that he plays in this position, Colin, that since Ange has come in, there's been a few players that were brought in who were meant for that role. James McCarthy being the first one.
Yep.
Ediguchi then came in that particular role, and then Abielgar. And all three of those players, two of them are elsewhere. One of them's left, one of them's on loan. McCarthy hasn't been seen for a while. It was obvious that Ange wanted this type of player. I think he's got the right fit this time with Iwata. I mean, like you say, it might take him out to get established in this side, but from what I've seen, he looks really, really good.
It's quite interesting. I heard Cy Ferry talking about Iwata the other day, and he was saying that the word from the coaches at Lennoxtown is that he is the best of the signings so far, in their opinion. Now,
the Japanese signings?
Of all the signings so far.
Of all the signings, wow.
Now,
accolade that.
I wouldn't want to say too much on who I think it might be that he spoke to, but he did play alongside Darren O'Day in a Legends game not that long ago, so I wonder where he's getting his information from. But yeah, that's the word that Iwata's meant to be the best of the signings that we've made so far, and there was glimpses of that, definitely. So it'll be exciting to see next season. You look at that midfield, and I think O'Reilly, as much as he's had some good assists and some decent games this season, probably hasn't been as good as what he was the last 6 months of last year. Hatate's obviously one of those players that we were saying This time last year when he came in, he looked good, then he sort of tailed off. And we're saying, right, can he improve? And this season he's been fantastic. And I think, as I said earlier on, it's that pre-season where they get to understand more and they train more, because you look at the amount of time between games just now and how much are you getting that opportunity to fully understand the system, to pick up on the tweaks that the coaches are making. You need a proper pre-season under your belt before you can actually do that. And I think with the likes of O and Iwata next year, once they've got that, Kobayashi as well, perhaps, we'll see them playing a lot more football for Celtic.
You're right, and they're coming into the club, Colin, with enough time to bed in for the Champions League, whereas in the past, these types of players were getting brought in the pre-season and then sometimes after the qualifiers and thrown in, and they just weren't ready. They weren't ready for it. They weren't, they weren't part of the team properly.
That's exactly what we were saying this time last year, though. We were saying about how we would be more prepared for the Champions League next year because we're actually using this January transfer window to be more proactive rather than reactive. I mean, in the past, you look at some of the January signings that we've made. I don't want to pick out any particular individuals, but a lot of times it was loan signings that were coming in to sort of fill in the gaps that we saw in the squad to get us through the rest of the year. Now, listening to Ange Postecoglou, and he said it himself, they are already one transfer window ahead. So he already has his summer targets. He's identified who he wants, and he'll work over the summer to get them in. His next thought is the January transfer market and how he can improve the squad ahead of the following season. So it's encouraging to see that proactiveness, and keeping this rotation of players going means that we can continue to develop and always keep that consistent level of success.
I like it, Colin. Yes, proactiveness. That's what it's all about. And in 18 months, Ange Postecoglou's managed to turn that around, rather than having that situation where we're going into the qualifiers of the Champions League and we're ill prepared. I remember going into a game with Callum McGregor playing left back, Bolling goalie sitting on the bench, having just been signed. Chris Julian, £7 million centre half, also sitting on the bench. And we fail in Europe, and you ask yourself why. Well, I think Ange has done an incredible job in terms of the recruitment. But I'm going to bring in a couple of these points here before we bring in our very special guest at about 1 o'clock, because I don't know if everybody's going to be agreeing with some of these points. We're well over 600 strong on the live stream this Monday afternoon, so thanks everybody for joining us. If you want to comment, get subscribing to the channel, give us a big thumbs up on that video as well. Now, Stephen, you're coming in to mess with our juju here on a Monday afternoon. Ange would definitely go to Leicester, Chelsea or Spurs. 99% of managers would. Should we be worried? Well, I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to say no, we shouldn't be worried. He's not going to go. He's not going to leave Celtic, and he's not going to go to any of these clubs. And we're going to get all these headlines. And as you said at the top of the show, Colin, we're going to hear them this week, because it's the way of the Scottish media to try and rattle Celtic before a big game. No, I don't think he will. I think he's got a job that he's maybe a third or 40% of the way through, and he's not going to walk out in a dead of night like one of his predecessors in Brendan Rodgers, who very sadly lost his job this week as well, Colin.
I'm just going to put a wee tick on my bingo card here. Ange linked with dream job away from Celtic. I'm only a couple away from a straight line now.
A full house, is that what you call it?
No, not quite yet. No, just a single line. We'll just go with a single line.
I've never played bingo in my life, mate, so you can keep it right.
You're missing out. No, but seriously, I mean, that's going to be in the papers this week. At some point, you'll see a story where Ange is linked to either the Chelsea or the Leicester job. It's this sort of run-up to the Derby game where they try and unsettle as much as possible. They're looking for clickbait headlines. We know what Ange thinks about them, so I wouldn't even give them the time of day, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, maybe Ange will move on at some point, but his focus right now is definitely on Saturday.
No, you're spot on there, Colin. So sorry about that, Stephen Sloan. I know you're a regular contributor to the comments section, but you're throwing that wee grenade in there on a Monday afternoon when we're looking ahead to the big game on Saturday. Now, a couple of more points, and then we will bring in our special guests. Claffs, 1978. Ange only focuses on ourselves and lets others worry about us. Sure, he'll make the players do the same. I think, Colin, that he's instilled that way of thinking, that state of mind within the Celtic dressing room, no doubt about it.
Yeah, definitely. You hear the encouraging words that come out from the players about what Ange has done to the club, how he manages to keep the squad together. And I was remembered back to a story that came out in The Athletic probably about this time last year. And they were talking about the former Celtic player Paddy Roberts and how when Ange Postecoglou took over, he was linked with potentially coming to the club. I think he was a free agent at the time, just before he made that move to, is it Sunderland he's at just now?
Yeah, he's with Tony Mowbray at Sunderland.
Yeah. And when Ange spoke to him and discussed his potential role in the team, Ange decided that he wasn't the kind of player and he wasn't the fit that he wanted at the club. Now, you listen to Ange and you look at the demeanour of all the players that he's brought in. They've not just got to fit the system technically, they've got to fit it with their personality.
Yeah.
And you don't see any prima donnas or anybody that's me in the team. And anybody that kind of is one of those players that's like, right, I don't want to be here. Ange gets them out the door so quick. You look at Juranovic, you look at Giacomakis, you even look at the potential one with Leila Badra as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. You know, remember all that chat? You're talking about clickbait. There was a bit of chat about Ronaldo. He wants to play in the Champions League and all this nonsense. And somebody had the bright idea to talk about him signing for Celtic. Listen, right? No chance was it going to happen. But I remember the situation, no comparing the players, but remember we signed Robbie Keane, right?
Yeah.
Peter Grant wanted him at the beginning of the season. He eventually got him near the end of the season. Imagine being presented with, you know, a proposition as a manager, right? We're going to get Ronaldo in for 6 months. I'll tell you something. I don't think Ange would have taken him. I don't think he would have taken him because of his character. You imagine he'd be a bad egg in that dressing room, Colin.
I don't think he'd have had a choice. I'm sure the commercial team would have been all over that.
Nah, he wouldn't have got a game. Wouldn't have got a game.
No, in terms of the system, I understand what you're saying. There is players with sort of inflated egos that if you ever see us linked with them, you know it's just a sort of clickbait headline. The types of players that Celtic are interested in are people that will come in and not disturb the camp. Put it that way.
They're a cog in a wheel. They're a cog in a big machine. Almost 700 live on the Monday live stream. Thanks everybody for getting involved. And by the way, before we bring in our special guests, big shout out to our Wednesday contributor John Hughes, whose late father would have been 80 today. So thoughts and prayers with John and family today. Big Yogi, an absolute Celtic legend. Marquis. Yeah. O'Reilly's a baller. Most of his work, like Turnbull's, goes unnoticed as it's build-up play and closing down opposition. He is good for an assist, that's for sure. We'll be talking about O'Reilly and whether or not he's going to be holding on to that jersey, Colin.
Did you see the video that Celtic put out during the international break where they got Jota and Joe Hart to do some commentary over clips?
Classic moments.
Yeah, there was a good one earlier on in the season where they were talking about the Aberdeen game on the first day when Jota pings one in from 25 yards. Turnbull actually rolls the ball into him and Turnbull gets an assist for that. And they were talking about how ridiculous it can be that a simple pass can lead to an assist, but you've got to do all that hard work to score a goal. That's modern football.
They're actually trying to deny Davy Turnbull that assist. That's just...
They're trying to take off him, I know. Shocking.
It does. We'll get back to the lead up to the big game at the weekend, Colin, in just a moment. But we're going to be inviting Lisa Miller and Julie Duncan from the Celtic FC Foundation Supporters Committee onto the show for their first appearance and hopefully not the last. And we're going to be talking a little bit about one of the endeavours that hopefully you can get involved in if you are a listener of Acsom. First of all, welcome to the show, Lisa and Julie. I hope you're well. Hope you're enjoying this season under Ange Postecoglou.
Absolutely. Hi, guys. It's good to be on. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us, guys.
It's an absolute pleasure. I've been talking for a wee while with one of your colleagues, Paul, who's a great friend of Acsom, all around the great work that you guys are doing. And you have set something up. It's 20 years, Lisa. How incredible is that? 20 years since Seville.
It's scary, makes us feel very old.
It does. Well, Colin makes me feel very old. Colin thought that I had a season ticket when Jimmy McGrory played centre forward, and he makes me feel old on a regular basis. Lisa, I'm going to start with yourself then. Tell us a wee bit about the Celtic FC Foundation Supporters Committee and how you and Julie got involved.
Yeah, sure. So the committee is fans-led. We're basically a group of very passionate Celtic supporters who are really inspired by the work of the Celtic FC Foundation. The committee itself was set up about 10 years ago, but Julie and I both got involved in the summer of 2020. We were asked to come on board. So there's 8 of us on the committee at the moment, and I was invited at the start of this season to become the chair, which obviously a big honour and a privilege to be asked to do that. We've got 3 main functions as a committee. So the first one is to kind of promote and champion the excellent work that Celtic FC Foundation does. We also volunteer when they have their own kind of fundraising events and initiatives. We go and help out at that. And thirdly, and what we're on to talk about today, is we organise our own fundraising activities for Celtic FC Foundation. So last year we hosted our first dinner, which, us being a fans-led committee, was all about celebrating Celtic fans. And last year's dinner was about Celtic fans and their experiences following the team in Europe. And we decided this year, with the 20th anniversary of Seville coming up, that we would continue that theme, but kind of specifically hone in on that wonderful memories, albeit with a devastating result in the end, but still some of the best memories in my life following Celtic. So that's very worthwhile, celebrating our fans as we descended on that Spanish city and took over.
Absolutely. Just recently, Lisa, I don't know if you got a chance to watch it. We've done an interview with Jim Orr, who's a regular contributor to the show and who is also, what would you call him, Colin? What would you call him? Keep it clean. He's a playwright. That's what he is. He's an author, he's a playwright, and he does shows on things like Bertie Auld, Bratback, etc. Bend It Like Bratback, Bend It Like Bertie. And he, of course, being the type of person Jim is, he went to Seville armed with a camcorder, and he's got some great footage which we were able to use and put up on the channel, because you never know, someone walking past might never have seen themselves, and there's going to be people in that crowd who have maybe sadly passed on, etc. So we put it all up on the channel. But it is incredible to think that it's 20 years on, some great memories. Some people come in on the comments and say, oh, we shouldn't celebrate a defeat, Colin. I would look at it differently. I would say we should celebrate the fact that was our 3rd European final.
Yeah, and there's so much to remember about it. It's not just the 120 minutes of the football game. There's the stories of how people got there, driving from Glasgow to Seville, and how people made their way there. And you look back on it, and the memories are there, even of the build-up to it, some of the great nights that we had at Anfield, at Celtic Park, down at Ewood, the whole men against boys stuff. There's so much more than just that one game in Seville. There's the whole run, and it's some of the greatest memories in Europe that I've had, certainly in my generation, so it's something to remember.
It definitely is. Julie, I'm going to bring you in. Tell us a wee bit about Seville, the Celtic Way. What's that all about, and how can our listeners get involved?
So, as Lisa said, it's all about the Celtic fans, their story, our story. As Colin touched on there, how you got there, the adventures that you had while you were there, and the people that you met. So it's a chance to catch up with maybe the people that you went to Seville with, or maybe people that you met at the time and haven't seen for a while. We've been really lucky that a number of the Celtic fans have supported the event already, and ticket sales are going well. But we have a closing date of Easter Monday for the ticket sales, which can be purchased online, and I believe you're sharing a link to that for anybody that's interested. But it's different to other events. We were talking about at this time of the season, there's always a great choice of different dinners and celebrations within the kind of Celtic fans community. Ours is just about coming together and reminiscing on that trip to Seville. There's a few fun things thrown in, so there'll be beach ball games. There'll be a chance to get your picture taken with the the European Cup. We've got the Road to Seville Wheel of Fortune, where you can win lots of prizes. There's a Spanish-themed menu, and it's not like a black tie dinner. You know, it's smart casual kind of dress code. So it is all about coming along. It's at the Crown Plaza on the 6th of May. Which hopefully will be a weekend that we have other reasons to celebrate, fingers crossed. So it's a chance for us all to get together and enjoy that evening. There will be guest speakers. There's some guys who are joining us on the night that are making a film about Seville and the Celtic fans, so they'll be there on the night telling us about that. But it's about the Celtic fans' story. Anybody that follows us on the social media channels, we've been asking, particularly this weekend, for Celtic fans to get in touch with us about their stories. So even if you're not coming to the event, we'd love you to get in touch to tell us about your stories for Seville. I know some of them might not be broadcastable, but if you would share those with us, that would be great. And also your photos from Seville. We're going to have a reel on the night of all the photos of fans in Seville. And we found that, you know, it's not just something that you can go on your phone and dig out and send on. You need to get the photo albums out and take pictures on your phone to send. But we want to collect all that kind of stuff in so that we can make it a really good, fun experience for anybody that's joining us on the night.
That's great.
You know, Gilly, you were talking there about the games that are going to be played. I assume there's definitely going to be some cheating from a referee that's going on during these as well, because that really gets us into the cup final spirit.
Well, Lisa and I were, just before we came online, we were talking about a game that we're going to introduce that involves penalties and stuff as well. So there's bound to be a bit of controversy.
Not that I'm bitter about the way that Jose Mourinho set his team up that night, but it's only 20 years ago. I'll go over it.
You'll get over it eventually.
I'll
Now,
go over it.
as Julie was saying, there is a ticket link underneath this video, regardless of where you're watching us on the social media channels or on YouTube. So get involved. And like you were saying, Julie, you know, the photographs are tremendous. The footage that Jim shared is on our channel. And we've done an event recently, and another gentleman came up and said, I've done the same as Jim. I've got a camcorder. Can you get that on your channel? So all this kind of stuff is in the archive, and it's brilliant to see. And it brings back those memories for anyone who was there. And I'm pretty sure there's loads of memories of those who couldn't quite get there and why as well. So let's go and celebrate it. I'm going to ask the pair of you before you go about the European adventures that we've had in the past. As a Celtic fan, the one manager that gave me belief, Lisa, I'll come to you first, that we could do something in Europe was actually Martin O'Neill. And then obviously since then we've had some success under Strachan and also Neil Lennon. But then Ange Postecoglou comes along. First European campaign, he was finding his feet. He was just trying to acclimatise to the Scottish game, never mind the European game. And then this season there were some signs that, you know what, we're going to do it and we're going to do it Ange's way. Do you think that in the seasons to come that we might make inroads into Europe under Ange?
1,000,000%. I'm the same as you, Paul. You know, in terms of my lifetime, Martin O'Neill was the kind of first manager where I thought, you know, we've got a real kind of chance of doing it. See a lot of similarities with Ange, and just the belief that he's instilled in the team and amongst the fan base, and the improvements that we keep seeing. You know, for the start that he made, that was only the beginning. He just keeps getting better, and I think if there's anybody that can take us further in Europe, it's him.
Yeah, I like that positivity on a Monday afternoon. Julie, what's your thoughts? Because, I mean, Lisa and I obviously come from the same era, a wee bit older than you, Colin. I'll get that in there before you do. But there's a belief, there seems to be a belief with Ange, even under Brendan Rodgers, who, you know, he's in the news for other reasons this week, but when he came to Celtic, he made a massive impact. Nobody can deny that. And we had some great success, but it was domestic success. Under Ange, though, it's almost as if we're building towards doing something on a different platform.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier on in this stream about him only achieving a certain amount of what he wanted to achieve, what he wants to achieve at Celtic. You know, so I think Europe is definitely, you know, part of that for Ange. And you know, when I stayed in Torremolinos when we went to Seville. So when we went back to Torremolinos after the game, somebody was on a karaoke and they were singing, you know, My Way, but they've replaced the words with Martin O'Neill did it his way. And I think that's the thing with Ange. He's absolutely doing it the way he believes, and he's we've all bought into that, and I think the next step for that is Europe. I mean, I've been lucky enough to watch Celtic in Europe away over 50 times, and my dad's, I think they counted during lockdown, and he's a lot more than me. He's only missed 2 in the last God knows how many years, and for the first time, I think you're going with a belief that you genuinely can kind of do that under Ange. First time in a long time, I would say. So so it's great to be a part of that just now, and roll on Europe next season.
That's incredible that you've been to so many away days in Europe. Could you give us a couple of your fondest memories before you go?
Oof, it's hard because we had this conversation with during lockdown about the best ones. Malmo, despite the result a couple of years ago, the atmosphere in the stadium was unreal. I thought that was great. But there's been a few crazy adventures. We went, spent ages on a bus when you used to go on a bus rather than a cheap flight with the Tommy Craig Celtic Supporters Club. I lived in England at the time, so they used to pick us up on the way. So there were some stories to tell on the coaches. And we went to Guimarães in Portugal, and we had a great time. We stopped off at a place on the way and for an overnight, and just pure adventure on that trip. But I went to my first one when I was 11 in Europe, and we get beat 5-1 in Switzerland, and we stayed in Mulhouse in France. And when Celtic scored their own one and only goal, I fell off the step and twisted my ankle, so I had all these doctors around me. So that one sticks in my mind as the first one, and but there's stories that are attached to every European adventure. Some that I want to repeat, some that I probably don't.
That was Neuchâtel Xamax, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, dearie me. Was it Brian O'Neill who scored the goal?
I can't even remember, if I'm honest.
You've probably blotted that out of your memory. Aye, absolutely. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this afternoon. Seville the Celtic Way is a fundraising dinner party which will take place on Saturday the 6th of May in the Crown Plaza in Glasgow. If you want to come along and get involved in that, the ticket link is underneath the video. All that's left for me to say is, Lisa and Julie, thanks for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Colin, 50 away days, that is phenomenal.
I know. I mean, we definitely know who we need to reach out for if we're trying to get some spare tickets for going away from home. But
Neuchâtel Xamax, 5-1 away. Oh, dearie me. Yes, I remember it well. And I'm pretty sure, without checking the wiki, I'm pretty sure it was Brian O'Neill, who had just broken into Liam Brady's side in the pre-season, who got that goal away. And we came back to Celtic Park thinking, you know what, we only need to win 4-0 here, right? And we got an early penalty. And Charlie Nicholas missed it. Seriously. And then it ended up 1-0 at Celtic Park, 5-2 in aggregate. And who was the manager of Neuchâtel Xamax, Colin?
So Dr. Joe?
It was Roy Hodgson.
Oh, was it?
Yes, back in a job over the last couple of weeks. Brilliant to hear from Lisa and Julian. Thank you to Paul for sorting that out and arranging that for us. There was one thing you were talking about prior to our special guest coming in, Colin, and that was the introduction, the cameo appearance of O. I think that we have seen enough. We keep going on about him because I think we've seen enough. This is a boy who's going to be making an impact at Celtic. There's no doubt about it. The substitutes made an impact yesterday, but of all the appearances, and we'll come on to Rocco Vata for a different reason, but I think really showed yesterday what he can do. The takedown, the turn, the shot, the whole thing. I like the look of what I'm seeing from O.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I think he's still someone that's learning a lot about the game, and you've seen in his early games here how he's got that sort of aggressive nature and how he wants to play, and sometimes you just got to tone that down a wee bit in Scotland, otherwise you end up in the referee's book. But some of the skill he's showing as well is fantastic. That flick yesterday was brilliant. You saw the goal that was ruled out when he was away on international duty.
What a finish that was.
Fantastic strike as well. So there is clearly a lot of talent to come out there. And I think, again, once he gets that pre-season under his belt, then we could have a really good competition next year between Kyogo and O as to who will be our starter. And that's great for the squad. You want that. You want players to be aware that their position isn't necessarily a given. It doesn't matter who it may be. you've got to be fighting for every single jersey. Obviously, Burnaby comes on yesterday for Greg Taylor, who went off with a slight knock and scores a fantastic goal. Now, I'll admit I said I didn't think Burnaby was up to it, but he's starting to show some performances now that you're thinking, right, you're taking your chance, and that's all you can do when you're given that opportunity. Is you've got to come on and you've got to take the chance that you're given.
Yeah, I'm getting a bit of stick in the comments here about calling Lisa old. I never called Lisa old. Colin called me old, and I think Lisa's from the same
Don't
era
try
as
and
me.
pass this off to me. Do not try and pass this off to
It's
me.
one of them. It's your fault. I would never invite someone onto this show and then start giving them abuse about their age. Colin, what is a completely different breed, however, and he does it on a regular basis to me.
I didn't start the fire.
Yeah, when is the St. Roch's game coming up? Plunge McNugget, yeah, we are waiting on an announcement. That's getting rescheduled. It was originally on the 16th of April, but of course Kilmarnock and Celtic's fixture was rescheduled for the TV cameras.
Yep.
And the vast majority of people coming to the game would have been going to the Celtic game. So we decided, or St. Roch's rather, the organisers of the game, decided that it was going to be rescheduled. We will let you know as soon as we know 100%. Yeah, we're very, very impressed with I think we've now got a situation where the other ones who we said during the week could be the scarcely seen Celts who could make a big difference between now and the end of the season. Well, we've seen a wee bit more of Iwata, very impressed. Comes on, makes a big impression. Haksabanovic, I think, was really keen to get involved as well. You could see that there's a directness to Haksabanovic, Colin, that I really like. He never, second guesses himself, goes back, all that kind of stuff. It's just direct, offensive player. The other one, of course, is Kobayashi. Now, I can't see him breaking in at this moment in time the way that the defence is set up, Colin. But Starfelt got a wee bit of stick, not a great amount of stick, a wee bit of stick for a couple of mistakes that he made. Other than that, though, his performance was as solid as ever.
Yeah, he seems to be the target, doesn't he?
He's on a very short leash.
Yeah, it's almost as if when he has like one mistake, it's like everybody sort of has a go at him, whereas he could go and have maybe 5-6 solid performances and he doesn't quite get the credit that deserves. So again, we're at a situation where we have not lost a single domestic fixture when the centre-back pairing has been Cameron Carter-Vickers and Carl Starfelt. And that's coming up now for 2 seasons, which is an incredible stat. And it just shows you the partnership that they've got. A lot of people would say, yeah, it's a case of, well, Kobayashi came in to replace Carl Starfelt. Maybe he did. But at this point, are you really going to break up that pairing? You can't. If you were to break up that pairing just now and then you lose a game, there would be calls right away for Starfelt to come right back into the team.
This is the balance, though, Colin, because we want there to be succession planning. We want players to be in the door before anybody else leaves. But when you bring them in the door, whilst the holder of that jersey is already in place, it creates this situation. So on the one hand, you're saying, well, Kobayashi is perhaps been brought in to replace X, Y, or Z. Well, of course he is. And that's what we've been crying out for. And Ange Postecoglou's got us there. And I think how many transfer windows has he had? Four transfer windows, and he's got us there. So great work. I've been very impressed with Kobayashi, although I've not seen enough of him. But another player in terms of dividing opinion, and we've spoken quite a bit on Acsom about him, is Alexandro Burnaby. He's someone who's come in, and I think every time I've seen him, the one word that I think describes him best is raw. There's a rawness about him. Anyone who watches the way that he plays for Celtic would perhaps say that defensively we've not seen the same qualities that we maybe see in a Greg Taylor, who Burnaby's trying to get the jersey off. But he comes in at the weekend due to an injury to Taylor. And what better way to make a mark than that strike? That was superb strike. He's been pretty good on the assist, but that was his first goal for Celtic. How impressed were you with Burnaby's performance?
Yeah, there's always that sort of concern when you see Greg Taylor going down and you're thinking, we've got this game coming up next Saturday. You'd really want him to come in. I think when you go back to when he came off at Ibrox, the team didn't quite settle. Obviously, we put Juranovic at left back and left Burnaby on the bench, which was a sort of telling sign. But as I say, the most important thing is that when you're given the opportunity, you've got to take it. And Bernabe had a very tough start when he came into Celtic. Some of that from his own doing, from demeanours off the park. And he
misdemeanours
off the park, sorry. And when he's been given the chance, there's never really been that performance that you've said, do you know what, he could push Greg Taylor for that starting jersey. But the cameo yesterday was really impressive. I don't think he'll start on Saturday. I do think Greg Taylor will keep his jersey. But what we're saying is that sort of push of competition for places. And if Bernabe can continue to do that in the opportunities that he's given, then it will be at the stage when you're in the pre-season going, well, who is going to be the first choice left back?
Well, the thing is, at the beginning of the season, we were talking about where you strengthen in the Celtic side with that vision of having 2 strong contenders for every jersey. A lot of us were saying goalkeeper, left back. We brought in a goalkeeper, we brought in a left back. And it's down to those individuals. Bernabe, I think, has had a stop-start. As you were saying, some of the one and only incident off the park, and people were saying, well, you know what, it's in the culture of where he comes from that you can have a bevy and jump in the car and drive about. Well, he's realised you can't do that in Scotland, right? So that kind of behaviour, he'll understand, is not the way to go about your business. But I think on the park, there seems to be more of a fluidity to his game, Colin, whereby Lawrence pointed out that there was a reluctance a lot of the time for players to bring him in, because they maybe just didn't think that he was up to scratch, and I don't see that anymore. That was in the kind of early games, the semi-final, for example, the League Cup. I think that was something that was pretty clear, but not now. Wee Jimmy's wondering why we call it the North of Ireland. That's because it is the North of Ireland, because Ireland is Ireland, and you give Ireland back to the Irish, as Paul McCartney once said, and it's the north of that particular country, like the north of Scotland, Colin. So that's why we call it the North of Ireland. Now, in relation to, there we go, Celtic FC Foundation, thank you. Absolutely, the work they do is astonishing all year round. Colin, we're going to have to talk about the penalty, my man.
Okay.
Over to you.
Look, now when you're watching football, that's given. Would you be annoyed if it was given against you? Yes.
Has it been given against us?
Several times. Is the rule the problem here? I think so. Because when you look at it, it's now the case of if the ball hits the hand and you're out of a natural position, it's a penalty. So going by the letter of the law, Willie Collum did his job correctly. As a fan watching that experience, you're going, is it really that much of a penalty? Because the rules on handball have changed so much, even in the last sort of 5-10 years, to the point where it's difficult to totally understand what a penalty is and what a penalty isn't. So us looking at it, we would say maybe it wasn't a handball, or maybe it wasn't deliberate, but deliberate doesn't even come into it anymore. I mean, you listen to Jakubowski's interview after the game, and he says, look, it hits off my arm, it's going to happen, there's nothing else I could do, it's a penalty. So he was happy enough with the decision, not maybe necessarily happy enough with the whole scenario, but he was happy with the decision. Malky Mackay has come out and said it was a penalty, as much as he, and I do agree with him, I do think VAR needs to be worked on in Scottish football. I've said that now for a long, long time. But that's just the way these rules are now. There's certain things in the rule book that have changed even over the last 5 years, not necessarily on handball, but like the offside, the player's got to touch it before you can flag for offside thing, when he might be 15 yards offside chasing a ball down and it takes him so long to get there. Mm-hmm. Things like that, the rules maybe need looked at as compared to the technology that's enforcing those rules, to be perfectly honest.
I'm going to bring this up because Peter nails it, right? It's a letter of the law. If it's a letter of the law, nothing else matters. Exactly. And Celtic have been penalised this season, as you said, on a number of occasions. I think the reaction, the full outrage you get from certain broadcasters and commentators, why is it a ridiculous decision when Celtic get the benefit of it, and it's not a ridiculous decision elsewhere? That, you know, then you start saying, well, it's the rule, and Celtic have benefited from that rule. I've got an issue with regards to if you're a footballer or you're into any sport, and this natural position thing where you're jumping up, you're trying to get leverage to try and jump higher than your opponent, then your arm's going to be all over the place, and often you won't be really in control of where that is because you are concentrating on trying to get the height in your jump, the bounce in your jump, as it were. Unfortunately, the rules state that if the ball connects with your arm at that stage, then it's a penalty. So that's just the way it is. There's been occasions this season where people have, moved their hands in front of the ball on a number of occasions, and the penalty's not been given. And that's the inconsistencies that frustrate the fan, the players, the managers. But as a letter of the law, that's a penalty. Lawrence and I were looking at it because there seemed to be an infringement at the edge of the box, leading into the box on Kyogo. And we thought maybe that's what had been obviously identified. But it's a penalty.
The commentators, though, that's what the commentators were looking at. It wasn't that they were looking at the handball right away as well. It wasn't until you actually got the VAR replay. And I do think that we have to be more transparent with these replays. I know, obviously, the likes of Dingwall doesn't have a screen where you can re-watch this, and not every ground has that opportunity to come over the tannoy and say a VAR review on potential handball or whatever. But we do have to have so much more of a transparency on this, because I'd be interested to know how many people in Dingwall yesterday, without looking at their phones, knew what we were potentially getting a penalty for.
I know, that's a frustration. And Jim has spoken about that as well, talking about VAR, the introduction of VAR, fan experience, non-existent, is it? And by the way, they need to sort out the cameras at Dingwall as well for those who can't get a ticket, because the angle of the cameras for the TV broadcasting is really poor as well.
Have you ever been up to Dingwall?
Aye.
The stand there is small. That's probably right on the roof of the stand, and that was still low down.
It's so, we're in 2023, and what you see sometimes is like temporary scaffolding for cameras and all that. You think to yourself, one of the biggest incomes you've got as an income stream as a football club is broadcasting rights, okay? So at least make it decent for the viewer, because this is something that's then getting broadcast all over the world. Remember Hamilton? What was that?
I said, we'll get drones doing it next.
I thought you said I'd rather watch it on teletext there. We'll get drones doing it next, absolutely. I don't want to run out of time without talking about Alistair Johnston. He was my man of the match yesterday, Colin. And I'll tell you what, he's just growing and growing with each passing performance. You're looking at the bit of business we've done with Montreal to bring him over here. What was that, about £3 million, I think, we got him in the door for. And you're asking the question, Joseph, who? I mean, the impact's been brilliant, going forward and defensively.
He's certainly settled into the team really quickly. He's sort of just came in and filled in that gap that was sort of there. Watching even some of the stuff that he's out on Celtic TV, where he's talking about, he's got that relationship with Greg Taylor. They seem very friendly. He's talking about learning the Scottish sort of language to an extent. So you can tell he's loving it. He says that what he does in the mornings, he wakes up, brushes his teeth, takes a drink of water, and then checks his phone to see how long it takes him to get to Lennoxtown. Now, that for me just shows you how committed he is to the team. It's great to see. So, I think he's someone who's instantly understood the sort of essence of what it is to play for Celtic and what it means to the fans, and you can see that in his performances. He's one of those players that he's always a 7 out of 10, and on his good days he's a 9 or a 10, and that's exactly what you need in the Ange squad. Someone that's going to knock in their pan week in, week out, and deliver those performances.
Has he got a better delivery than Moritz Bauer, Colin?
Anything was better than Moritz Bauer, Paul. I
don't know what you had against Big Moritz. Whose news they could do with the yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the advertising boards around the park. The what do you call them? Electronic. I was going to call them electric. No, they're electronic boards. Get them on there. Get the messaging on there for VAR.
Every stadium's got a tannoy system, right? It could easily be connected to the ref, and it could be switched on every time that the VAR discussion's ongoing. And I'm pretty sure that is something that they are looking into, so that the people in the stadium can hear what the VAR is discussing and what they're looking at. So even, as I say, these stadiums where there isn't a screen that you can necessarily look back at it, then they can at least understand, oh, by the way, he's looking at a handball on Yakaviti from Cameron Carter-Vickers. Then you're at least understanding what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I think the point that Jim made the other week there was that it's all geared towards the TV audience knowing what's happening and forgetting about the punters that have actually paid their money to get in the stadium.
And yeah, it's something, as Who's News says there, it's rugby. Rugby do that. Now, obviously, the rugby stadiums have the big screens where you can see the replay and the fans see the replay, but they're talked through the decision, they talk through the rule, they discuss what the punishment should be, and everybody knows what's going on. Whereas for a fan, even at home now, when you're seeing the replay, sometimes you're still not sure what exactly is going on, what they're looking for. How is that offside? Where is the line being drawn? It still doesn't make the experience for fans at home or at the ground any better.
No, I agree with that. Some people are saying ditch it. It looks as though it's here to stay. So if it's going to be here to stay, then what we should do is improve it. So improve the way that we use it, Colin. Now,
we should have had this though, Paul. This should have been.
We get
told we brought it in early because we fully understood the system and everybody was ahead of the game. We're showing that we probably shouldn't have brought it in until next season because of how bad people have been with it. It gets to the stage now where a penalty or a red card can be looked at during the game. It can be reviewed. The referee can go and watch that replay back time and time again to decide whether it's a red card or not. Then, after the game, the team can appeal that red card. It can go to a room. It can go in front of 3 independent people and they can get that red card overturned. So what's the point?
No, you're right. What is the point, Colin? By the way, I've really enjoyed that today, Monday afternoon, where Colin Watt, at the top of the show, we were speaking about a missing person. So let's bring that back up so it's fresh in your mind. We went right up to 7:50 live. We're sitting at around the 6:50 point at the moment. So let's make sure we can see the reference number. This is Reese Roger. Reese is from my neck of the woods. We spoke last week about Evan Reid, who unfortunately was reported missing as well. And you just never know, Colin. Someone might have some information. The broadcast goes out to all corners of the planet, never mind just in Scotland. So if anyone has any information about Reese, he's 28-year-old. You can imagine how worried his family are. He was last seen on Saturday night, 11:30, on the 18th of March. He was out camping and fishing with his mates, and he's not been seen since. So please, anyone who is in that area, who might have a dash cam even, Colin, around about that time, that night, get them checked out. Check your outbuildings, your garages, your sheds and all this kind of stuff. And hopefully we can get Reese back safely to his family as well. The reference number, if you have any information, is 1348 of the 19th of March if you phone 101, and hopefully we can get Reese back ASAP. Colin, it's been an absolute pleasure to welcome you back onto the show. You look as though you're poised to say one last thing.
I was just going to say, we hope Reese is found safe and well. We also hope that, I forget his name, sorry, from last week, is found safe and well. Evan, because he's still out there. But also want to pass on congratulations to the Celtic B team, defeating Rangers at Ibrox yesterday, 3-1. Some great goals there, and also some interesting red cards as Rangers finished with 8 men. And a congratulations to Fran and the women's team after everything that they've had to go through this week, putting a professional performance to beat Partick Thistle 2-0. So a treble for Celtic, and hopefully not the last one this season.
We follow 3 teams, don't we, on Acsom? We follow 3 sides on Acsom. It's like going back to the old shoot questionnaire. What is your favourite second team? And guys like Tommy Burns and Peter Grant would say Celtic reserves. Well, we follow the Celtic B team and the Celtic women's team as well. So thanks for the update. And yeah, Celtic behaved themselves against Rangers Colts. Unfortunately, they didn't behave themselves. We'll probably talk about that at some point this week. Thanks everybody for getting involved. We love your contributions. If you want to comment, get subscribing on that channel. Give us a wee thumbs up on the video as well. And we'll be back tomorrow at 12:30. All that's left for me to say though is thank you once again for joining me, Colin Watt, on A Celtic State of Mind.